Hey, I'm Sarah Smith, family doctor, clinical day advisor, and the chatting coach. Welcome back to Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast, where we're going to be interviewing peers or world experts who can help us think about our clinical day in a way that is more sustainable and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Everybody, and welcome back. Today we have with us Dr. Jenny Brockis. It's lovely to have you.
It's great to be with you, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us a bit about you.
Oh, gosh. So I'm a doctor, trained in the UK, started life actually as a nurse because I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, but knew I wanted to work with people. I think that's not an uncommon thing. So trained as a nurse, then realized that nursing wasn't my calling. And I think it was because I was living with medical students at the time. And they always seemed to be having great fun and going to parties. And I was there working all these terrible shifts and thinking, because I'd always believed you had to be super intelligent to be a doctor. And I didn't believe that I had that level of intelligence to make it through medical school and be worthy of being a doctor and all that sort of self-talk stuff. Anyway, changed that, applied. And to my great surprise, I was accepted. And so I started and had to do pre-med, which it was known as then, because I'd done art subjects at school because I was rubbish at chemistry and physics and maths. And in those days, the pre-med was an extra year where you had to do all the subjects that I was particularly terrible at. And as long as you got 50% in the exam, you got into medical school. Ta-da! I don't think it quite works like that anymore. But anyway, that was how it was for me. So I got in, went through Bristol Uni, which was absolutely fantastic, loved medical school, and always had the aim of getting into general practice because that's where my heart lay. I wanted to be working in the community. Along the way, we ended up migrating to Australia because my husband got headhunted. He was an engineer. I always said I would never go out with another medical student because I thought the talk around the dining table would be too boring. So anyway, he was offered a job in Perth, West Australia. And so we thought, oh, we'll give it a year, 2 years. Here we are, quite some decades on. We never went back. We loved it so much in Australia. We settled, we had our family. And I set up my own GP practice, which is something that would never have occurred in the UK because it wasn't possible. You always had to join an existing practice. So it was great fun. And I loved it. And I loved being a GP, except I put work first before everything else. Highly driven, always wanting to be the best, trying to meet other people's expectations of myself. And I missed all the warning signs that things weren't right, as can happen, until I found myself passed out on the floor of an osteopath's rooms where I'd gone to seek help for my chronic shoulder and neck pain. And that was it. I was very embarrassed at that time, went home and never stepped foot in my practice again.
Oh.
I was so burnt out. It took me about 12 months to recover. And so I had lots of time to think what led to this event. And of course, at first I blamed myself for letting everybody down and then came to realize that, yes, I had contributed to it, but actually it was a lot of other things within the health system which had actually contributed to my eventual demise as a GP. And I also realized that I didn't want to go back to being a GP because I also recognized that I would probably end up burning out again. And I didn't want to put myself or anybody else in my vicinity through that. So I went off into the corporate space, set myself up as a health and well-being consultant for workplaces because I had all my patients would come in and most of them were stressed up to hear with things going on at work primarily. So I ventured into that space. I don't know why I thought that would be any less stressful than general practice, but it was different and I was my own boss and I could do as much or as little as I wanted. So it suited me. And then over time, I gradually realized I missed medicine itself. And I fell over, just came across it on LinkedIn, actually, this entity called lifestyle medicine. And I thought, what's this all about? Never heard of it. I looked at it and thought, this is exactly what I've been teaching people in the workplace for the last 16 years. How we eat, how we move, how we sleep, how we manage our stress, all these things make a difference to how we feel about ourselves and how we manage our work and our lives. I joined up, I retrained, got my accreditation, then went on to get my fellowship. And I just realized this has given me back my joy, my passion for medicine. And the other thing that I loved about lifestyle medicine is that a large proportion of it, it's focused primarily on prevention and sort of mitigation of chronic disease, but it also involved effective behavioral change. And for me, that was the holy grail that I had been missing when I was working in traditional Western practice. I'd give all this wonderful advice to people and they'd sit there and nod. Yes, Dr. Jenny. Yes, Dr. Jenny. 3 bags full, Dr. Jenny. And then they come back in 3 months and I go, how you go? And they look at me blankly as if I'd asked them a very strange question. And I realized that nothing had changed. So in lifestyle medicine, there's a very strong emphasis on behavioral change, and we use it through coaching techniques. So health coaching became part of my remit. And so that's what I do more of now. And I work primarily with people in the workplace still, with more people coming who are already in the health system. So stressed out doctors or people looking to transition into something else. It could be a nurse or other allied health professional. It's anybody who's just looking for some assistance if they're feeling stuck or burnt out, or just need somebody to talk to and to have that headspace to work things through. So that's me, that in a nutshell.
Love it. Thank you. Tell us about starting a general practice by yourself. Was this a solo general practice? And the challenges that went with that? Because I hear the end of the story, but I want to kind of hear the beginning of the story, because I wondered why by yourself, if it was by yourself, if it was solo.
Initially, yes, it was by myself. And call it serendipity, I don't know what you call it. I was actually doing an obstetrics rotation in a local hospital as part of my GP training. And we all were invited for an interview with the medical director. And he said, oh, Jenny, what are your plans for the future? And I said, actually, I'd love to set up my own general practice. Oh, he said, I might know somebody who can help you with that. And it turned out that his brother-in-law was a developer and was actually building a brand new general practice in the northern suburbs of Perth. And they were looking for somebody to run it. That was the reason why I ended up setting up my own general practice. Would it have happened otherwise? I don't know. I probably would have gone the normal way of joining somebody else's practice and getting experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I found myself in this brand new building, all 144 square meters of it, and thinking, wow, I can. And this goes back to perfectionism and strong desire to provide the best medical service possible. I thought I can set up a general practice exactly as I believe practice needs to be done. So that meant that I had free rein to determine how long my consultations were going to be. I knew that I would have to charge for my consultations because bulk billing wouldn't fit that mold. And I started off. I did, although I set it up on my own, I did invite a friend, another GP, to do some sessions for me in the practice because I had to work elsewhere in order to gain enough income to actually run the joint. But it grew quite quickly because it was a young suburb. There were lots of young families, and we were the only general practice in that area at that time. Within 2 years, it was well established, and I ended up, it was created as a family practice, run by family GPs, and there were 4 or 5 of us in that practice at the end.
So you were in the practice or I guess the medical supervisor. I don't know how you set it up, if you were practice manager to start with, or if you hired that position out early. But that whole hire and fire of staff, setting up your electronic medical record, charging fees, figuring out Medicare.
It was a steep learning curve, I can tell you, Sarah. I knew nothing. I was making it up as I went along. And so, yes, I very quickly had to learn the basics of how do you run a business? Because it was nothing I was taught about in medical school. All I knew that I was basing it on was that fact that my dad had been a vet in the UK. He ran a small animal practice, and he had a number of assistants who worked with him. And so I had that knowledge of how my mum had helped him basically set it all up. He did the sort of looking after the animal stuff. She had always been the one in the background doing the accounts, setting up the appointments, always on the phone, blah, 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 blah. So I imagined that is what I would have to do, and very quickly realized that going in early to the practice so that I could hoover the carpet before anybody else arrived was actually not the best use of my time. Fortunately, one of my beautiful receptionists said, Jenny, I can do that for you. So she took over the role of hoovering the carpet, which was great. And little by little, I learned how to delegate and enable the other people in the practice to take on their roles to make sure everything was running shipshape. Because, yes, I was very bad at taking everything on by myself, which also is why it contributed to my burnout.
Yeah. Let's go to the burnout part of the story now. So what were the straws that broke the camel's backs? What was it about your day-to-day practice that was unsustainable, that created this broken human on the floor at the osteopath's office? What do you think were some of the highlight reel of that part?
It was neglect on my part, neglecting my own needs and my family's needs. It was perfectionism and wanting to prove to myself that I could do this, because I'd got into medical school, I'd done all the hard yards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I could do this, and ignored the warning signs of the excess fatigue. I was always made sure that I was the first person in. I was inevitably the last person out. My husband bought me my first mobile phone because I would stay on late to do the dictation, to write up my notes, et cetera, et cetera. He said, I'll buy you a phone. You can do it in the car when you're driving home. Note to self, that is not the way to do it. But that he realized that I was pushing too hard, but I was talk to the hand, I'm fine, the usual. No, I can do this. I expect to be busy. I expect to be stressed. I expect to be dealing with my staff, personal issue, as well as my clients, et cetera, et cetera. So it was not recognizing that it didn't have to be all done by one person, even though I had got slightly better at delegating, and being blind to the fact that I was becoming increasingly unwell, because burnout doesn't happen overnight. This happened over months. I think it was the repeated times when I ended up covering other people in the practice. A GP was sick or wanted to take a holiday, or they couldn't do a particular shift, and nobody else would step up and do it. So it was me. So I missed out on things at home. I was always the one who got in about 8 o'clock at night. The kids were already in bed. I was missing out on my family and seeing them grow up. I didn't see my husband enough. And I started to feel a bit resentful. For the first time in my life, I started resenting work. And that wasn't me at all, because I love my work. I love my patients. And I started dreading going to work. I'd get in the car and think, oh, here we go again, another day. And I was exhausted before I even began. I was exhausted before I got out of bed, but I just kept on pushing and pushing through. It was only after the burnout episode, when I'd left practice, that one of my receptionists shared that everybody else around me was so concerned. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to say, because they knew they'd just be fobbed off. I'm fine. the patients were actually talking to the receptionist and saying, is Jenny all right? Because I'd lost so much weight. I'm not a big person anyway, but I'd lost nearly 10 kilos. I was looking skeletal, big bags under the eyes, and et cetera, et cetera. And the rumor was that I had cancer, which I learned about afterwards. And I was shocked that I was so blind that I couldn't actually see how I was appearing to others. Maybe I would have done something differently if I had. I don't know. Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
I hear the difficulty of having two big hats, that practice owner and worker bee. Like you said, dad was a vet and mum was the practice manager. You took on both
Yes, I
without any
did.
formal training in the practice management part. I remember a young supervisor when I was in my second year, my second placement for general practice, the general practice terms. And he said to me, do medicine for the first 5 years before you even think about practice management, because you got to get the medicine under your belt before you even think about the additional skill set you need to hire and fire staff, manage patients, manage expectations, manage Medicare, manage all the other aspects of running a practice. And I thought that was very wise, given that in the very next year, I was being offered partnerships and buy
Oh,
into
wow.
practices and
Yes.
practice manager level pieces, roles and responsibilities. And I took his words of wisdom to heart. But I still see this. I still see this in the GP supervisors who looked after me when I was training.
Yes. Yes.
There's some of them are still practice managers. I still see the practice managers out there who are doing this two hat piece. And it takes a lot of either organization or grit. It either takes grit and you're going to burn yourself out, right? You're going to push and do both. Or you have to realize what it's doing to you and really say, what needs to come off my plate? Or how do I do this so I'm allowing time for both roles and not just trying to do it all?
Yep. I think it was gritty. I was being gritty.
You were being gritty. So you're on the floor at the osteopath's office.
Yep.
Husband had tried. He's here. I'll give you a phone. I'll try. The receptionists are trying, but you're like, hand away, go away. I'm fine. I'm fine. Patients are trying, and you're like, nah, we're not hearing them either. You hear your own internal body, and you're like, I'm not even going back. So how did that whole I'm not coming back figure it out? How did that handoff go? Who took over? What was the out for you?
The out was working with an amazing psychologist. My GP, I did actually have a GP, so that was a plus.
Good job.
I hadn't seen her for a long time. Took one look at me and said, I'm referring you to X, who happened to be a psychologist who specialized in helping health professionals when they were burning out or stressed or whatever. I was horribly embarrassed. I thought, this is ridiculous. I said to my husband, I said, what do you think he thinks of me? Here I am, a trained doctor, having to go and see them because I passed out on an osteopath's floor. And he said, it's all right. He sees all these screwed medical practitioners all the time. You're just another one. So that put me in my place, but also gave me permission to relax and go see what he had to offer. And we worked together for almost 12 months, which is an indication that he had a hard job to unravel all the stuff that I had put on myself. But we got there. And the insight was that, yeah, I was probably in the wrong career, if that's the most honest answer. I've dealt with anxiety and depression many times over my life. And it was during COVID that I had another bout of depression, and I had to go and see a different psychologist. And she said, Jenny, you've made some very interesting career choices which don't suit your level of high functioning anxiety. And I looked at her and I said, what? I've got what? I hadn't worked that piece out, that in fact, part of this drive to always prove myself, to try and keep up and be as good as everybody else, is what had contributed to the burnout. I hadn't worked through that piece of allowing myself to be me, to allow other people who were close to me or who knew what they were talking about, like the psychologist, to actually assist in separate work from play, work and life, because I'd removed that part entirely. The resentment of not being around for my kids was becoming a louder voice, because I felt I was missing out on their childhood, which I was. I was paying for a lady to come in to pick them up from school, to feed them dinner, to supervise them and put them to bed, because my husband traveled a lot as well. So between the two of us, we were right pair. But I didn't want to have them grow up and not know who their mother was. So that actually helped me to make that shift to, you're allowed to be you, Jenny. Yes, you can be the good doctor, but you can also be a better mother, a better partner, a better friend. One of my friends said, Jenny, I like having you around for dinner now because you don't fall asleep during the main course, which probably reflected that I was pretty tired. So yes, it was those invitations to just relax and deal with the high functioning anxiety. That was the turning point. And that was fairly recent. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. All right. So we transitioned into workplace and then we transitioned into lifestyle medicine. So how is lifestyle medicine different in its sustainability for you compared to general practice? Because you're still seeing clients, patients. There's still notes to be written.
Actually, they're not, because I'm no longer clinical. So when I say I work in lifestyle medicine, I'm working as an advocate for lifestyle medicine. I'm still working with my workplace clients and other people to my new mission. I always have to have a mission. Is to help get lifestyle medicine into medical school and other allied health training, because I see lifestyle medicine as a way that allows all health practitioners to rekindle the joy and the passion for what they do, so they don't fall foul of being at risk of burnout or getting demoralized or disillusioned. Lifestyle medicine is a two-way street. It's good for the patient. It's also really good for the practitioner, because if you're walking your talk and you're actually paying attention to the fact you do need to eat healthily, no grabbing on the run or skipping meals, and you do actually make time in your day to do those things that set you up to be in a good mood, to feel good about stuff in general, getting up outside first thing in the morning with my cup of tea and looking outside around the garden, listening to the bird song, all that sort of stuff, which I'd never done before. Those type of things in lifestyle medicine rekindled that little flame that had been almost completely extinguished before, when I felt like I was just in a hamster wheel, just dealing out good advice that nobody listened to or took any notice of, and just was sticking band-aids on. I wanted to go to the root cause. It was making people unwell. And that to me was like, oh, yes. So lifestyle medicine to me is about helping practitioners to learn you can integrate it into your practice. It's not just one more thing to do. It becomes part and parcel of how you practice your medicine. It's involving your client or your patient in the decisions to the level of giving them options and saying, I'm here to support you. What do you think would work best for you in this particular instance? So what I've loved seeing, and this has been particularly true when I've been working with medical students in one of the local universities, which is great fun, is seeing the light come on in their eyes, because I was hearing them go through their patient simulation activities, those lovely things that we all went, oh, about. And they come out with the same spiel and they'd say the same things. I'm thinking, yeah, Western medicine hasn't changed that much over the last 3 decades. To giving them the option and flexibility to ask slightly different questions to their simulated patient. And the light would go on in their eyes and in the patient's eyes. And some of the simulated patients would say, wow, that was such a powerful conversation. So whether we were talking about weight management or type 2 diabetes or heart disease or whatever, this is the thing I saw time and time again. I thought, yep, this is what can make the biggest difference to help practitioners feel valued, appreciated, feel they're actually making a positive difference again. So that's what I love, seeing that aspect of it. And also, of course, the patients are getting great benefit because they're actually finally making the changes that are serving them better. They're able to put in place those lifestyle choices that actually do enable them to get a little bit fitter, a little bit stronger, do a little bit more, which as a coach, we know is the way forward. So that's why I love it so much.
All right. Let's talk about if you are now going to be coach for Jenny, who was in her general practice. Because you said at the beginning I could set it up however I wanted. Length of patient visits, do patient care in the way I wanted to. I really had as much autonomy as I needed. Tell me how you might have set up your day so that it could be survivable for Jenny. Have you done that exercise before? I'm just curious.
No, it never crossed my mind to even think about it.
That's okay, but the principles are the same because where I started in Australian general practice, I was absolutely feeling the same thing and I wasn't practice owning. I was staying late. I was the last one out the door. I was back on Saturday finishing my notes. I was there Sunday again with small children at home, hubby at home, fortunately not flying around, but still felt like I was missing out as a mum. That then followed me to Canada. And I was still last one out. I knew the code. I knew the janitors in every place I worked. I knew the code for every door, for every practice I've ever worked at, except for the one I work in right now. I've forgotten the code. And I'm not the last out. And I'm not the first in. So it doesn't matter that I don't remember the code. Yay. But it's the setting it up in a way that is actually sustainable. The advice that you might start with this practice owner GP who's burnt out, she's losing weight, she is not well, and she's decided to put her hand up for this health lifestyle idea thing, but doesn't really know how it's going to work.
Yes.
What do you think might have been helpful to you then? If we were to reset this up again, we're saying, Jenny, you're going back to
Going through a
general practice
reset.
next
Yes.
year. What are you going to do differently?
Okay. I think I would be asking the questions. What do you really want out of your work and your life? What matters the most here? And where do you fit into that? Because I think I had a very strong notion of what mattered to me, but I hadn't any place for me. So I think I would be asking, okay, you love obstetrics and you want to deliver your own patients, but how is that going to work when you're in practice and the local hospital is 30 minutes drive away and you've got the nurse midwife on the phone saying, Jenny, she's about to push, we need you now. Are there some things that you can let go of, even though you love them, that's actually going to help you to be able to thrive in your practice and be a more useful practitioner for your patients?
You also had the priority that you were resenting not being home. So I see that as one of the big priorities is I want time with my kids, first and foremost.
Yes. And I did, and I would be asking the questions around, you want to be with your children more than just for half an hour a day when you're getting them up in the morning and getting them ready to go off to school. How is that going to happen if you're fighting the desire to get out of the door with half a piece of toast in your hand, thinking that will keep me going till lunchtime? How are you going to change your routines to ensure that you're spending the time with those that you love and mean the most? And I think that would have helped to have made those small tweaks to change my mindset about having to be the first one in, having to be the last one out, because it's my practice and I've got to open up and lock up. No, it's about giving yourself permission to challenge your thinking, because I was very set. I had set up ways of doing, and if I'd had somebody to say, really, is that the best use of your time? Is there a different way that you could enable things to run in the way you would like them to run, but without you having to be there 24/7, so that you can have time off with your family, with your husband, to go out on a date night, to read a bedtime story to the kids, to play with them, would have been really helpful. I had no boundaries, no concept of boundaries. I just kept pushing the boundaries out. And I would have really benefited from somebody saying, okay, the boundaries have fallen over in the left upper paddock. What are you going to do about them?
I love that.
The cow's getting out.
Yeah.
I think having somebody to reestablish the boundaries that I could manage and felt okay with, and then enabling the habit of honoring those boundaries would have been enormously helpful. It was interesting. The first thing that happened after I left my practice was that the remaining doctors took on a practice manager. I wonder why.
Because they didn't want to. You'd already established they didn't
want to do it. No,
they didn't even want to look at each other's inboxes when they were on holidays, let alone hire staff and figure out the whole, how does this place work anyway? Yes,
exactly. So I think the boundaries piece and the routine of ensuring that I had time for me, for the kids, my husband, and my friends, that would have made the biggest difference of all. To realize that by having time out to go for a walk or play or do something fun, it would quell the anxiety. It would make me feel better, and I would function better as a consequence. But because I just needed to learn that skill. So if I'd had somebody there to do that, would have made the biggest difference of all.
Yeah. And I love that you say these are learnable skills. Like learning how to be a practice manager, you learn how to do that. Learning how to open the doors on a new business, you learn how to do that. How do I put boundaries in place and how do I honor them? That's a skill. You can learn that. How do I get my notes done in real time so I don't have to do them tonight and dictate on the phone in the car on the way home? Also learnable skill. So there are, like you said, we practice in the way we practice, whether it be because we saw others doing it this way or it's how we decided to show up and work with our nice ideals and potential boundary issues. And I think bringing that earlier into medical school, how do we do effective motivational health coaching with our patients? How do we take adequate rest and recovery for ourselves is great skills to learn earlier, because decades of us in our generation of hours and hours of unpaid, extra and onerous work because we weren't taught so much the boundaries and the way to work efficiently and how to do these other pieces, which are all teachable, learnable skills. So helpful. And it's so helpful to say, how could we have helped her? Because the Jenny of old exists still. Our listeners are in the thick of it going, yeah, that's me. I'm still on the way home. I'm still the last one out and the first one in. I'm still missing out on my kids. I'm still haven't exercised in years. The things we want our patients to do, but we don't give ourselves the time to do it. And it can feel really difficult to start figuring that out in real time.
The hardest thing was putting my hand up to say, I need some assistance here. And it did take that shove from collapsing in the office to make that happen. But once it did happen, it was like, oh, why didn't I do this before? Because I think particularly in general practice, you tend to be very isolated. You're in your room, you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with, And even if you're in a group practice, you're still in and out. I remember days when I'd come out at the end of the day thinking, has anybody else been here today? Because I've seen all these patients, but I haven't seen my colleagues, and not even my receptionist particularly, because I've been so busy and blinkered. So I think it is a skill set which I totally agree on. We need to be taught these ideas in medical school or in allied health training as a protection, a way of protecting ourselves from ourselves, particularly if you recognize that you are super motivated, super dedicated. I'm the super person. I can do all this rubbish, because it's not true.
And a little bit of perfectionism and anxiety just for fun.
Just a wonderful combination.
Magical combination for burnout.
Combination, yes, yes, yes. I wish I had that person. Many, you want to do this, you want to achieve that, but what's real? What is actually realistic and sustainable? Because I didn't have that in place at all. That would have made the difference. That might have made the difference to me still working in that particular general practice. I might still be doing all those things because it was a dream come true. I had this new practice. I could do all the long consults I wanted to. I could practice in the way that I believed medicine really needed to be practiced, not a sort of push through. And yeah, it could have been very different. It wasn't, but I have learned some lessons, some hard lessons from that. But I don't want anybody else to go through that. And my fear is that unless we take on board the ideas of what makes healthcare sustainable, we're missing that opportunity for other health professionals. And it breaks my heart when I hear of similar stories, because I know I'm not alone by any means, of other people burning out, disillusioned, I'm out, I'm done. And I think, what a waste. We spend all that time, all those years perfecting our craft, and yet we don't include the sustainability piece. And that needs to change. And it matters whether you're in general practice or in your community work or in tertiary work. We all need to learn those sustainability skills. That is the crux of what's been missing.
Yeah, as your colleague, I would have hated that story that Jenny's collapsed and she's not coming back. That would have been like, oh no, we failed her. As a group, yes, we work in isolation, but you want your colleague to be well in the next room, even though we're not seeing them for half the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I felt such deep shame and such guilt at failing, because when you're a super dedicated, motivated GP, failing never comes into it. Again, I made it probably hard for my colleagues to not console, that's the wrong word, but to share their thoughts and feelings. I just removed myself totally from the scene. I disappeared under a rock, not to be seen for 12 months. Although some of them were beautiful, and some of my patients were absolutely fantastic and reached out, and I had all sorts of communication with different people. And it was also interesting how some of my other colleagues that I didn't know particularly well from other practices in that area came forward and said, Jenny, I'm so sorry to hear what's happened. When you're ready, if you would like, we would love for you to come and work in our practice. And that was like, whoa, really? So although I had created this idea that it was all my fault and nobody else cared, that wasn't true.
Yeah. And I think that's such a big piece of this conversation, is that shame and guilt felt the right things to be feeling in that moment. And it's the thing that further creates isolation, because shame just grows in the dark and guilt gets bigger when we're not sharing it with others. And that mitigation of burnout requires connection and validation and others to help us.
Yes.
And it feels so terribly alone if you're feeling like, I should know better, I should know how to do this by now.
Yeah.
That ability to say, okay, this is actually harmful ways of thinking. I need to find my people. I need to get connected and help and learn, be hugged, be included as part of my healing journey.
Yes, yes. So I look back on that time as the hardest lesson I ever had to learn. It was a lesson I did have to learn. And I think that you're totally right. The biggest thing that helped in my recovery was not just having the marvelous psychologist and my husband, who is a total rock, who was there for me. He kept saying, I have no idea how this happened or why you've ended up in this state, but I'm here for you. Your kids just are your kids, and so they accept you as you are. That's no problem. It was the connection piece. It was feeling that others around I could talk to, they were there to support me, even if it meant just going around and sitting in somebody's kitchen for a couple of hours while they fed me cups of tea or coffee or whatever, and we would just chat. It was just that basic human need for connection and support that had somehow been filtered out and had got lost. So connection is all.
How do people find you if they're wanting to connect with you?
I have a website. It's simply my name. It's Dr. Jenny Brockis, so Dr. Jenny with a Y, BROCKIS.com. The website was created primarily when I was working in the corporate space more. So there's a few corporate looking pictures. But basically it's there so that I love writing. I've written a few books.
Yeah, is any of the books useful for this audience?
The book that might be most helpful is the one that's called Thriving Mind. That was written because of my burnout piece.
Yeah.
So it looks at how we can thrive without burning out, but it's not specifically just on burnout. It looks at other aspects of well-being as well.
Yeah.
I write a blog every week. So I put that out to all my database, my people. I'm sure some of them read them sometimes, but that's okay. I just love writing. I love researching. And I think I've let the curiosity cat out of the bag. I'm always open to finding out more about what could be done differently or better, particularly in the healthcare system. This is my modus operandi. I'm always looking to see, this is the way it's being done now. Is there a new or a better way? And it's not necessarily going down the AI route. That's a completely different story, as we know. But it revolves around human connection and the need for time in nature, the need for play, the need for time out, sometimes to be on our own, whether we're introvert or extrovert. Sometimes the joy of just being out. This is me speaking. I just love being out on my own in a green or a blue space and just listening to other sounds around me that I don't have to necessarily interact with, but I feel connected to the greater world outside.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Is there anything we didn't talk about we should talk about before we end?
I think what I would like your listeners to take away is the idea that burnout isn't inevitable. It can be managed before you reach the final tipping point of collapse, because some people molder in burnout for a long time before burning out. But to take that time for reflection. I think the other thing that person could have advised me a long time ago would have been, Jenny, when do you set aside that meeting with yourself, that appointment with yourself, where you just sit back and go, how am I actually going? Am I enjoying this? Am I working to the level that I want to and in a way that actually benefits me? I think that reflection piece can be really helpful. And the other two pieces we've already talked about, the need for connection, human connection with other people, colleagues, friends, whoever, to do things outside medicine. I have learned so many new skills and ways of playing since that time. And it's been an absolute joy. But I think it's really important to ask ourselves, okay, what do I love doing that I'm not doing at the moment that I could? schedule in that time, because we know we have to schedule it in, because otherwise it doesn't happen. So do I want to be learning how to kayak or swim, or I don't know, learn how to grow cauliflowers or something? It's all those things that we think, I'll be interested to try that, but I've never had the time. I don't make the time. I don't allow the time. So I think make time something that we can make more useful to us, rather than trying to cram it full of work. Let go. Doesn't have to be just work. I think that is the greatest joy, to know that work is an important part of our life. It can be very rewarding and fulfilling, but there's many other aspects to life beyond work that are equally deserving of that love and attention. So play and connection, and allowing yourself to be yourself, not playing to somebody else's expectations of who they think you should be.
Love that. Thank you so much. All right.
My absolute pleasure.
Guys, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Hey, if you found this podcast episode helpful, I would encourage you to like and subscribe. Every time you do, you help a colleague or friend find our podcast, and it can help them too. Don't forget to share it along with your friends. If you're looking for extra help, don't forget we have Charting Champions for physicians and Smarter Charting for nurse practitioners and other clinicians to help you get home with your work done. We are helping you create sustainable clinical medicine. Thanks for listening.